Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on November 8th. I did two recordings earlier today. I did one on my post-election perspectives, and then I also did a video on the lab that released the monkeys on accident, maybe. And, I gave you my perspectives on that. So please look at those videos. Please help support my work by donating. You can donate on my homepage and my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel. All the links are in the description of this video. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please follow me on the 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, Rumble. Make sure you follow me on all the channels because I do get censored on YouTube. Follow me on X. I have 2 channels on X. I have 1 on GETTR, so please follow me there. And I also opened up a new channel on TikTok, so you can follow me on TikTok. You can listen to podcasts on Podomatic or on Apple Podcasts. All the links are in the description of this video. And, help support my work by sharing the links and going to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have great products that will help support your health. So before we get to the business news and to the other news, maybe some political news, let's talk about some products that I have. The-studio-reykjavik.com. I have structural nanosilver toothpaste. This toothpaste will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, neutralize pathogens, maintain a good gum line, improve your oral health, your oral hygiene. And by having good oral hygiene, you're going to mitigate cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. This is a very high quality toothpaste. It's made from structural nanosilver. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this great toothpaste. It's a very high quality toothpaste, has no fluoride in it. So please go to my store, get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household. You're going to need it. I also have structural nanosilver gel. This structural nanosilver gel is dual purpose. It'll help to heal wounds. It'll also can be used as a daily skincare product, and it will help to neutralize pathogens. Put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils. It'll neutralize pathogens. Great during the cold season. Get a couple tubes for your household, and use this on a regular basis to neutralize pathogens. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video, and get the structural nanosilver gel. I also have, because we're in the cold season, it's really important to take drops and lozenges. So I have it in blueberry drops. This is made from structural nanosilver also. The whole idea is that once you have an irritation, you want to neutralize that irritation, neutralize that pathogen, and get the secretions to maintain that mucosal barrier. By maintaining that mucosal barrier, you're reducing the chances of further infection. Really important to do right when you start getting an irritation in your throat. I have it in drops and in lozenges. The drops are smaller. The drops are in 100 count. You can get it in blueberry. You can also get it in cherry and in honey and lemon. All right. So please go to my store and get the drops, or you can, or you can also get the lozenges. The lozenges are a little larger. It's in a 21 count. The Manuka honey is what I have in stock. Very high quality lozenges and drops. Get a few bags for your household. During the cold season, use them, mitigate, neutralize that pathogen, maintain that mucosal barrier, and you're reducing further infection, the chances of further infection. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the drops and the lozenges for your household. It's really important. The moment you have that irritation, take the lozenges and the drops. With that said, I want to go to Bloomberg and listen to what they have to say right now.
Intelligence talking to us about what to expect in the next administration of President-elect Donald Trump. This is Bloomberg.
Oh, okay, so they're going to advertise here. So with that, let me take a look at what's going on in some of the other news. Yeah, let's Trump announced his chief of staff. So let's see CNN's reaction to that.
What if I told you that 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts?
Breaking news, President-elect Donald Trump tapping his campaign manager, Susie Wiles, as his incoming White House chief of staff. It's Trump's first major staffing announcement as longtime allies jostle for the most coveted jobs. Brian Todd is joining us right now. Brian, it looks like Trump is prioritizing loyalty as he starts building his team.
He is prioritizing that, Wolf, as he always has. And his first major choice for a position, one of the most crucial jobs in any administration, is reflective of that.
I love loyalty.
Donald Trump's first pick for his new administration is a testament to his value of true loyalty.
Susie likes to stay in the background. She's not in the background.
Susie Wiles, Trump's co-campaign manager for 2024, who's just been named White House chief of staff, is called, quote, tough, smart, and innovative by her boss, and has been praised for running an efficient campaign.
You want somebody ideally who knows you, who understands you, who can give you good advice, but who can also implement well, who can carry out directions.
I think it's really important that resources were stretched thin for the Trump campaign. Harris had a lot more dollar resources available to her, all right, than Trump. So having someone that knows how to get things done with limited resources, I think is a really positive thing, especially when you want to truncate government.
To be that type of person.
A source says Wiles told Trump she would only take the job if she could have more control over who could reach him in the Oval Office.
Hello, everybody.
As for the public face of the Trump administration, Caroline Levitt, who was Trump's campaign spokeswoman, is said to be in strong consideration for the significant job of White House press secretary.
Go ahead.
For the position of Attorney General, one of the most sensitive, important jobs in any administration, and one that Trump might use to go after his enemies. A name being floated is Ken Paxton, Texas's Attorney General.
I'd like to open a betting pool as to how many days, not weeks, months, or years, it will take for Ken Paxton to start doing very controversial things that even Trump won't like.
Like Trump, Paxton has been both indicted and impeached. Paxton was acquitted by the Texas State Senate for alleged retribution against whistleblowers, interference in federal investigations, and inappropriate favors done for donors. For Secretary of State, a key national security position, Trump's reportedly thinking of Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who's hawkish toward China and was a finalist to be Trump's running mate.
I think most people think that would be a responsible choice. It would be somebody who does know international relations, who has been around these issues now ever since he got into the Senate.
But what to do with Robert Kennedy Jr.? Trump's promised him a top public health position. But Trump advisors tell CNN Kennedy's already caused headaches for the Trump team, like an interview he did with MSNBC just hours after Trump's victory speech.
There are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go.
RFK Jr., if he has the president's ear, could put in place anti-vaxxers, anti-fluoride people above scientists.
Meanwhile, regarding billionaire Elon Musk, who might lead a team in the Trump administration that's dedicated to cutting the size and budget of the federal government, a source familiar with the conversations around Musk tells CNN it seems unlikely that he would want a full-time government position, given what that would mean for the companies he owns, X, Tesla, and SpaceX. We'll see what happens with Elon Musk.
It's just down the world. All right, thanks very much, Brian Todd. Our political experts are here with me in the Situation Room, and Jeff Zeleny. The choice of Susie Wiles to become the White House chief of staff. She's the campaign manager. She did very well, very impressive. What does this signal?
it signals that the president-elect is ready to get started, and he knows his way around the job this time around considerably more than 4 years ago. 4 years ago, when he was, or 8 years ago, excuse me, when he was being elected, he was coming from private business, from Trump Tower. Now he'll be coming to the Oval Office. He knows what he wants. He knows the people around him. And Susie Wiles is sort of a singular figure, I would say, in the former president's and president-elect's rise. I cannot think of a person who's had as much a discipline. She has respect both inside and outside. She's someone who has not worked directly in Washington. She has a lot of longstanding Washington relationships at several firms in town, as Brian knows well, but she also has goodwill. That she will be the first female chief of staff. I think that is something that just sends a message and a signal. But our Steve Contorno had some good reporting earlier. He said she had a couple demands, and one was this: the clown car can't come into the White House at will. And he agrees with her, a source close to the president-elect says. So that signifies that Susie Wiles is going to try and keep a level of discipline, and that she has some, her own explanation for that. She allows Trump to be Trump, but she also keeps some outsiders at bay. But the chief of staff is so important in setting the agenda and keeping things going. As we all know, it's just about 10 or 12 steps or so from the Oval Office. It has a corner office in the West Wing. It's important in terms of proximity and power.
It's very important indeed.
And power.
It's very important indeed.
I think it's really important that she set out these parameters and said in advance, I will do this, but I have to be able to control access. And this was a problem that other chiefs of staff, most notably Kelly, complained about, because Trump had this open door policy and anybody could just wander in. And I think it shows a certain amount of discipline that she's going to try and enact inside the White House.
Brian Lanza, you worked with.
Now, I listened to the audiobook of Kushner's memoir and also Pompeo's memoir. There was a common theme in it. And they said with Kelly, the administration, Trump had a problem with Kelly because it was too constrained. Kelly had too much of too much of a command and too much of a control of the calendar, and not allowing a free flow of information from his staff members to Trump. And he was like the gatekeeper. Before Kelly, Trump was able to, he does better in chaos, not in like a very consistent, very calm situation. All right. Some people just work better in a chaotic environment. But Trump was complaining that there's no action, there's no activity. And it was because of Kelly. So, maybe there needs to be a middle ground. But over controlling his schedule and not allowing a free flow of information coming in may be detrimental to the Trump administration if you over control. So I think a lesson learned from what Pompeo said, independent of what people think of Pompeo, and a lesson learned from what Kushner said in his memoir. You don't want to over constrain the scheduling for Trump and preventing people to freely flow in and out, because he works better with that environment. But let's see. I mean, I think there is a lesson learned from what they were saying in Kelly was not good for the Trump administration at all. So when CNN is like saying, well, that's good for Trump, to control him, and Kelly needed to do that too. Well, that's not what Pompeo and Kushner was saying. Especially the crises that were happening during his administration. So we'll see. We'll see.
Susie Wiles, or give us a sense. What does this say to you?
Best in class. I mean, Donald Trump made a decision. He's going to choose best in class, and Susie Wiles is best in class. You said it right, continuity. You're going to have continuity in the campaign, and now you're going to have continuity in the administration. I think Trump made the best decision for himself. you know, the best decision for a party and for the country. Susie
Now,
knows how to execute.
I think that she's probably a good pick, but just don't over constrain his schedule. Let him free flow, because that's how his thinking works. All right. He's probably, you know, there's probably an element of ADHD in him, but of like a baby boomer version of it. What scares me is if CNN likes something, you might want to go the opposite.
And that's the most important thing that President Trump wants. He doesn't want a lot of people talking. He wants to have people execute. And she knows how to execute as well. She knows that she has a tremendous amount of relationships here in Washington, D.C. She has the trust of the president. She has the trust of campaign staff. A lot of us would walk through fire for her. And we're excited she has it. And I do like to point out, you know, she's a woman. You know, my daughter can now have an example of a woman hitting a position of power like this. And I think that's a good thing for this country.
Let's talk about what's going on another key issue. Alicia Cross is with us as well. Trump said today that his proposal for mass deportation of undocumented immigrants will have, in his words, I'm quoting now, no price tag. What does that suggest to you about this massive effort that he's about to undertake?
That he doesn't know how the system works. I do think that Donald Trump is going to go outside of all things civil rights. He's going to go outside of all things justice to try to come through on a campaign promise. He wants to make sure that he is a—
Sorry, honey. The president of the United States is the commander in chief. What that basically means is if he thinks if he thinks that it's a national security issue, he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Eradicating the undocumented population. He is not just speaking about new arrivals. He's talking also about people who've been in this country for the past 20, 30, 40 years. To do that seismically, to have—
Yeah, but only if they're not naturalized. You know, you can be an illegal for 30 years. You're still an illegal, period. Let's call it for what it is. Are they illegal or not illegal? Let's not like whitewash it and sugarcoat it and all this stuff. All right, honey. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics that I have. I have it in powdered form, which you get a little scooper, you mix it with your food. That's what I just did. You know, you saw me eat my hummus. And you can get it in veggie cap form. Probiotics are really important to improve your absorption of your nutrients, lower inflammation in your gut, have a better metabolism, have a better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. By having a healthier gut biome, your skin's will be better, will be clearer. You'll have less irritation with your skin, and your brain will have more clarity. You'll have higher clarity. You'll have better restful sleep. A lot of things can be influenced by your gut. If you have a bad gut biome, your gut's going to negatively influence your body. If you have a good gut biome, your body will heal and perform better. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get either the powdered probiotic or the veggie cap probiotic. But you should be taking a probiotic every day. Every day. Very important. And take the max 35 or the max 14. Really important. You take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle with it 30 seconds or so, and then swallow it. It neutralizes pathogens and maintains a good oral hygiene and maintains that mucosal barrier, which is important to mitigate infection. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the max 35. I take a teaspoon a day. We're in the cold season. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. Really easy to use. Take it every day. All right.
You know, have law enforcement that are correlating at the federal level as well as in the states and cities across this country. That does require a significant amount of money. You've seen what that price tag is. But because he recognizes the American public does not like big price tags on anything, he is, I think, you know, lying flagrantly here about being able to do this without a cost associated.
All right, you know, Jeff, as you know, Democrats will no longer control the new Senate once it comes in back to Washington.
She's also thinking too siloed. let's say that may cost some money to deport these people. All right. But they're being deported to a certain country that wants to do business with America. So it can be offsetted by another silo, like the economic silo. Okay, honey. And that's how Trump thinks. It's like 4D chess. It's not 1D chess.
House potentially remains in play right now, but do the Democrats really have the ability, assuming the House stays Republican, do the Democrats have any ability to affect real policy?
No, I mean, not if the House is in Republican control. It obviously depends what the margins are. I mean, the margins in the House, regardless, will be slim. So as long as the House stays unified, which is always an open question, of course, but Democrats will have limited policy control in both chambers. However, in the Senate, it still requires 60 votes on some things, and Republicans will not have 60 votes. But I think
now let's just assume that they're not, but let's just assume the Democrats won the Senate and the House. They would be all gleefully in that they could circumvent all of Trump's policies, or because they're so anti-Trump. But because of the Republican Party, looks like they're, they have the Senate and the House. All right. It's not official yet, but it looks like it. They're kind of like, well, the Democrats don't have as much control. They're not so gleeful. It is so obvious that CNN is pro-Democrat. They're not pro-news. They're pro-Democrat. That's the problem. And that's the reason why Trump won. Or one of the reasons is the biased media.
Poll searching that is underway right now in the Democratic Party. It's not unique to Democrats. It happened in Republicans over the years. I'm thinking back to when Barack Obama was reelected in 2012, and Republicans were talking about we need to do an autopsy and figure out really how to rebuild the party. Parties get rebuilt on personalities and people we may not even be thinking about now. But for the short term, Democrats will have to make a decision if they're going to be part of the resistance, or some may find some need to cooperate on some things. I think Senator Schumer has already said we'll work in a bipartisan way on some things. But look, Democrats now, particularly if they don't control the House, which it looks like they won't, but we will see a lot of seats still must come in. They're in the wilderness for a minute.
Well, they're going to be in the wilderness for a while, and they need to go to the couch and sort of try and figure out what went wrong in this election. And because I was talking to a Democratic pollster who said, look, this is what you would call a rolling realignment in this country, and it is based on class. And the Democrats, the roles have been switched. The Republicans used to be the party of the elites. That's not the case anymore. The Democrats are known as the party of the elites, which is the reason they lost many Hispanic male voters, for example. And this is a huge issue for them. It wasn't a message problem or a messenger problem per se. If they have a problem with voters in this country, and they have to figure out where they want to work on, say, immigration reform, and where they don't want to work with the Republicans. I mean, they have to figure out where they stand on a bunch of stuff and get their act together, to be honest.
I agree with certain parts of that, but I don't think that this was as much of a messaging problem as some people are trying to make it out to be, as much as it is a policy not meeting where people are conversation. Because if you're going to say that the Democrats were not the party of the working class or have abandoned them, which I've heard several working class people say, then I question how or why there is no connection between all of the union and workers' rights that were granted during the Biden-Harris administration. Why, when you have a president who is fighting for a living wage, fighting for a higher minimum wage, why, when you have somebody who is, as of today, there was an announcement about SNAP benefits being expanded for people who are on college campuses because a lot of them can't afford to eat. When I see things like that, and you're talking about individuals who are literally working tirelessly, the Democrats in the House, as well as President Biden and Kamala Harris, to ensure that individuals every day can feed their families, and they have the policies to prove it, and people who are beneficiaries of said policies are still arguing, even though the Trump administration previously and Trump have largely only done one thing. They have made tax cuts readily available to the rich, and have increased the 1% class to stay there forever.
Listen, I would add that it's important to realize the role that inflation played in this.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything related to your work, your documents,
the role that inflation played in this.
Yeah.
Inflation played a huge role. It clouded everybody's judgment. It changed people the way they think. You know, when a mother can't feed their child, they don't care about anything else. And so I think the Democratic Party, you know, the Democratic Party, Bill Clinton was very strong. The Democratic Party of Barack Obama was really strong. You can't say that about Joe Biden, but they focused on bread and butter issues. This coalition of Joe Biden got broader than it should have been, and they didn't know how to say no to certain
Just when Donald
constituencies.
Trump was in office, I do recall, it was the Thanksgiving before he left. The man was about to cut food stamps. So if we're talking about people who are taking food out of families' mouths that need to eat, he was leading that charge.
No, and voters made a decision that the inflation that has bankrupted them, the inflation that has caused them to max out their credit cards, the inflation that's caused them to wipe their savings, sort of clouded everything.
Well, they didn't
And
feel it, and there wasn't a good enough explanation about what happened, why,
And
and
she didn't want to change anything.
what you're gonna do, right? There was no separate.
People need to get to the root cause of why people are having problems not being able to feed their family. And that's because the opportunities were diminished under Democratic policies. Boom.
There were certain things that I think we're going to be stagnant regardless, particularly because coming out of the pandemic, we saw in every developed nation, leaders did not get reelected. So I think that holistically, there are people across the globe who are having those similar issues, and it was just really hard for any incumbent to see.
We begin tonight with Donald Trump's choice of his campaign manager, Susie Wiles, to be White House Chief of Staff, to do a job that 4 others did with varying degrees of success and frustration in the first Trump administration, in which CNN has learned she put conditions on taking, especially one source tells us concerning access to the president, or in the source's words, quote, "The clown car can't come into the White House at will." Now, that same source adding, quote, "and he agreed with her." Now, late today, in a statement announcing his decision, the president-elect said, quote, "Susie is tough, smart, innovative, and is universally admired and respected. Susie will continue to work tirelessly to make America great again." She certainly had a job to do as a campaign manager for a candidate acknowledged to be difficult to manage, and a president who frustrated several chiefs of staff the first time around. In thanking her and her fellow campaign official, Chris Lasavita, he highlighted her preference for avoiding the spotlight.
Let me also express my tremendous appreciation for Susie and Chris, the job you did. Susie, come, Susie, come here, Susie. Chris, come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The ice thing, we call it the ice thing.
Susie Wiles is the first of many people who will be chosen to serve in the second Trump administration that critics and supporters alike say will differ from the first, something that Donald Trump Jr. underscored today while saying he need to have a role in this selection process.
I'm going to be heavily involved on the transition. I want to make sure now that we know who the real players are, the people who will actually deliver on the president's message, the people who don't think that they know better than the duly elected president of the United States.
Seems to be suggesting there'll be fewer independent thinkers, more loyalists than before to carry out many promises.
Fewer independent thinkers, but they were deep staters that came into the administration to try to deep six the policies of the Trump administration. See, it's like, no, it's not fewer independent thinkers. Mr. Yale, Anderson Cooper. It's trying to prevent the deep state from hamstringing the Trump administration, second term. See, the problem is that with the administrative state, right, you have these lifers that are used to try to slow policy down or to corral policy for the benefit of the national security state or the administrative state or the deep state, whatever you want to call it, all right? Trump is antithetical to the national security state and the administrative state and globalization. So they wanted, in the first administration, the administrative state wanted to try to have some control over Trump. And because Trump was naive, he let it happen. Well, now he's not naive, but then, well, you're not going to have independent thinkers. No, the point here is that there's an agenda, and he has a very short amount of time to get it done. And he has this very small window, and he needs to get it done. And he needs everyone on board, not people that are going to slow walk it. And I think this is a good, hopefully he is getting the right people around him to be able to get the job done with the policies that he talked about during the election. So what it is the administrative state is all worried because now they can't control them. Oh, I feel so bad, Anderson. Anderson, he needs to go to the gym. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help build muscle and maintain muscle, and also help to improve your mitochondrial health, which is the ATP, the energy source that you need for your muscles. When you get older, you lose muscle mass. You need to take Myotrol so you maintain your muscle and build more muscle. Really important, especially when you get older. But if you're an athlete or you work out a lot, Myotrol will help you to build muscle and help to have that energy levels to recover when you're working out. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Okay, Anderson, get the Myotrol. All right. This is the problem with people that went to Yale. You know, a lot of them work for the CIA. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. This helps to improve your immune system and also helps to improve your endocrine system. Really important. So please go to my store, get the lignans. They'll bring down inflammation, and it's also an antioxidant, so it'll help to soak up those free radicals. Having a good immune system is really important. Please go to my store and get the lignans. This is a powder. You mix it with your food or with water. You saw me eat hummus. I put it in the hummus. You mix it. It's easy to take. Take this every day to improve your immune system. And lastly, it's really important to take some of these great new products that I have, like NAC. NAC will boost up your glutathione levels. That'll soak up free radicals. And what this will do is help to detoxify your liver and your kidneys and bring down the stress of the sympathetic nervous system and calm the sympathetic nervous system. So that's really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC. My dog is pissed off because she doesn't like Anderson Cooper.
Being on the campaign trail.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. And if these companies don't make their products here, then they will be paying a stiff tariff when they send their products into the United States for the privilege of competing with our workers and our now protected companies. I will end the war in Ukraine. I will stop the chaos in the Middle East, and I will prevent World War III from happening. We will build a missile defense shield massively. We are going to build the greatest, the biggest missile defense shield.
We're going to protect kids in America. And we're going to get men out of women's sports in America.
Bobby Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., and he's going to work, and he does this very strong on, the pesticides and all of the different things.
We'll talk more tonight about how he plans to deliver on some of that and some of the repercussions if he does, especially on his deportation plans. First, though, more on the chief of staff appointment of CNN's Kristen Holmes. So what should people know about Susie Wiles?
Well, Susie Wiles is a Trump loyalist. She is one of the only people, Anderson, who stuck by his side after he left Washington in disgrace in 2021. She came to work for him, and she really stuck with him throughout the entire campaign. She served as de facto chief of staff after his first term. I was there on election night when he threw a fit because this is a 2022, excuse me, because none of his candidates won. She was by his side then. She was by his side when he announced his candidacy shortly afterwards, and she has remained by his side. And I do think one of the important things to point out here is that quote that our colleague Steve Contorno got from someone who was an ally of Susie Wiles about the clown car, because that is something that she did and did well on the campaign. One of Susie's mottos when she talks to people close to her is that she can't control Donald Trump, and she understands that, but she can control everything around him. And that means access to the former president, now president-elect. And that is clearly something that she is going to do in the White House. They believe she did this well. It was keeping controversial figures away from Donald Trump. Obviously, she couldn't always do it, but it was trying to keep the chaos around him, who is a chaotic person, to a minimum. Now, this is really setting the tone for the entire administration, because it is clear that she is someone who is taken seriously in Republican circles, particularly not just the MAGA side of things, but also the establishment side. People respect Susie Wiles. So this is really giving you an indication of where this is going to go. But first and foremost, Anderson, the thing that she cares about most is the fact that she was loyal to him.
Yeah, and who are some of the other people being talked about?
Yep, you guessed it. Another talking head ad where somebody's talking about people making hundreds or even thousands per month using nothing but their computer. Let me guess.
Yeah, and who are some of the other people being talked about for high-profile jobs?
Yeah, there's quite a long list here. And again, I want to just make sure that we're being clear that there's going to be a lot of jockeying and these positions are going to roll out. We know some of them might come as early as this week, but these names are just some of the names that are being floated around. So for Secretary of State, one big one, Senator Marco Rubio. This has been floating around since he didn't get vice president. One thing to note, Don Jr., top advisor to Donald Trump, his father, lashed out at Marco Rubio, had some really nasty things to say when he was up for vice president. So we'll see how that plays out. Next, Attorney General, which is going to be one of the most important positions in Donald Trump's administration, because Donald Trump wants to control the Justice Department. Ken Paxton, the Texas Attorney General, is on that list. Mike Lee also on that list. I also want to add one name we don't have on this one, but it's John Ratcliffe, the former Director of National Intelligence. These are all names floating around. Elon Musk, he is up for some kind of government efficiency advisor. One thing to note about that, Donald Trump has joked about the fact that Elon Musk will not join the government. He doesn't want to get rid of any of his properties and any of his companies. He doesn't want to have to divest. We are told that this is likely going to be a workaround for Elon Musk in some kind of form of a committee or advisor role. Now, obviously, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., we're very interested in that. A public health advisor, likely. We'll see how this all plays out. We know that RFK has been talking about how he wants to be potentially a secretary. Elise Stefanik for UN ambassador, that's one that I'm told she's already met with the heads of the transition team, and potentially Carolyn Levitt for press secretary. So this is moving fast as he named Susie Wiles today. We'll see what the next position he puts forward is.
All right, Kristen Holmes, thanks. Joining us now is Republican strategist Michael Singleton, CNN senior political commentator David Axelrod, journalist Gretchen Carlson, co-founder of Lift Our Voices, and Sabrina Rodriguez, national political reporter for the Washington Post. David, what do you make of the pick for chief of staff?
Look, I've said many times here during the course of this campaign that Donald Trump had, that the Trump campaign, they had a rational campaign and an irrational candidate. And she kept the campaign, she and Chris LaCivita kept the campaign on track. And they did, to a large degree, keep the clown car away. It's tougher in some ways in Washington, but
talk about that. I mean, the role of the chief of staff. You saw this obviously in the White House yourself and with the Obama administration. There were in the former Trump administration, there were meetings with some of the.
Well, my guess is the one thing she's going to do is try to tightly control who goes into that Oval Office, and so that it's not people can't wander in and influence things without her knowledge, and that's going to be very important. I mean, a chief of staff, if a chief of staff is empowered, can be really, really important in terms of the paper flow to the president, the people that the president sees, the decision tree. It can be very, very important. But I'll tell you this, chief of staff is very effective if the feeling around Washington is that chief of staff has the confidence of the president. And the fact that they've developed this close relationship, very important.
Sure, Michael, as a Republican, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, I've known Susie Wiles for a very, very long time. And there are people who are not necessarily pro-Trump, but who are pro Susie Wiles, because to them, this signals that the second coming of Trump presidency is going to be very different. I mean, she's a trusted thinker. She has several decades of political experience, and she is someone who can prioritize and manage an operation. And David, you know this very well. That's going to be critical to David's point of controlling the flow of information and access to the former president. And having someone that he trusts who can sort of set up those guardrails will be critical to making sure that whatever types of judgment calls that are made, the best advisors are getting to him first, not anyone else. So I feel very confident about how this is shaping up so far.
Controlling, though, I mean, obviously Donald Trump is a unique figure in American politics, and given what we've seen, I mean, there's only so much one can do, I would imagine.
Well, she obviously was doing something right because she's lasted a long time with him. And the idea that she was as disciplined with him as possible. I mean, I'm thinking about Laura Loomer, who, you know, was with him during the 9/11 ceremonies, which was not a good look. And she probably wasn't happy about that. One thing I want to focus on, though, is that she's the first female chief of staff, which when I heard that today, I was like, wow, like that has never happened before. And the first thing I thought of actually after that was Mark Cuban owes her an apology for saying that Donald Trump was not surrounding himself with strong and smart women, because obviously she's
This is what I mean.
able.
This is what I mean. The ultra-liberal agenda, the ultra-lib agenda is going to eat itself, because throughout the Trump administration, he's going to show them that they were wrong. This is a classic example. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps that I have. This one happens to be lemongrass, but I have 5 different varieties. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these very high quality structural nano silver soaps. I also have a great multivitamin, vitamin C. Vitamin C helps with your immune system and also helps with your skin. So please take it every day, drink it with filtered water, and during the cold season, if you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Really important. Boost up your immune system and improve your skin. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin C.
Hang on to this role as a smart, strong woman with Donald Trump this long. I did also like the fact that she's going to keep the clown car out. I think Donald Trump is influenced by the last person he speaks to. And so that's really important. And I also thought about the fact that he brought in Corey Lewandowski this past summer, and I'm sure she didn't like that as well, because the talk at that time was maybe she's going to be on the way out and Corey Lewandowski is going to be higher up. So I think this is, you know, well-deserved role for her.
Sabrina, you've followed the campaign obviously very well.
I think it's, for me, what's going to be interesting is seeing voter reactions to this. I think voters are less concerned about who exactly are the people that are going to be executing the policy. What they want to see is Donald Trump come into office on day one and do the things that he promised he was going to do. And a lot of these things are very lofty, ambitious plans. I mean, to execute the largest mass deportation effort in U.S. history is going to require a lot of coordination. And we know from, extensive reporting that behind the scenes, Trump allies have been planning for this for a while. So really, it's a question of watching him set up things in the next few months to be able to start implementing those things on day one.
In terms of selecting people, David, in a new administration, what is that process generally like? They have an advantage this time. They've done it before, so they know what mistakes they made the last time.
And obviously, a lot of people have been thinking about this, and they've had a process going on.
And loyalty seems to be very the top of the list.
What happened the last time was they had a transition team, but there were, and Chris Christie was heading that transition team. He had differences, or Jared Kushner had differences with him, and took his transition report and threw it in the garbage. It was obviously this it's a little more orderly, and now that she's empowered as the chief of staff, you'd think that she is going to play an even larger role in this. One thing we should mention, this will mean nothing to you, Anderson, but a lot of people will know this. Pat Summerall was her father, who was a great football player and kicker and broadcaster, so she's been around blocking and tackling all her life. That would be useful.
Is it Michael, you heard Donald Trump Jr. saying he's going to be very involved in sort of looking over the vetting process, the hiring process. Loyalty, clearly, they feel that they had people around the president, then President Trump the last time, who were trying to kind of control his impulses. It seems like they don't want that same type of person
I mean, I
around.
think Susie Wiles is going to try to do a little bit of that. But I think, look, he's the president. You want individuals who are going to serve the president and serve him well. I was a part of the transition team in 2016 when Dr. Carson went to HUD. I'm very familiar with that process. And, you know, you have some good people. You don't have some not so good people, I suppose. I got a feeling this time, though, Anderson, looking at some of the names we've seen suggested for some of those key roles, this is going to be different. And you saw Sabrina talk about the mass immigration. How are you going to execute that? You need people that are going to be able to do it and do it well. What is that going to look like? Who are you choosing? I mean, there are a lot of complexities there. And I think if you're looking at this from Trump's perspective, you're looking at the first 60 to 90 days, not only immigration, but also the economy. What is that going to look like? What's going to be the focus there? So I think it's not necessarily about finding people who are uber loyal to the president, but loyal to trying to bring to fruition his ideas for the American people.
And I think that this time around, you know, he's going to win the popular vote. And so I think that he feels like his mandate, he has more power in his mandate, thinking that a majority of the American citizens want him to do what he campaigned on. Whether or not that's true to the 46% who didn't vote for him, that's another story. But I think that he's going to take control in a different way this time. He didn't understand Washington, D.C. when he came in 2016. So he brought in people who understood it better than he did, and he clashed with a lot of those people.
It's really interesting to see what role Vice President Vance will have in this administration. Obviously, when you're running, you see the vice president out campaigning a lot. As we saw when Biden took office, Vice President Harris sort of disappeared from public view for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's an open question at this point how involved Vance is going to be or what exactly Donald Trump will want to see him doing. I mean, if it's going to be having Vance out touting, you know, what Trump is doing in those first days and really being a cheerleader for Donald Trump, I think we'll see some of JD Vance. If JD Vance goes off script and gives some different messaging around how things are going to be executed, I think he'll be in a more behind the scenes role and sort of what we expect from vice presidents often.
The powerful Miele range, built for a totally new kitchen experience. Whether you use it.
Let's drop into Trump. No. Bloomberg. Bloomberg looks like they're going on advertising here. Okay. Fox News here. Boom.
Meanwhile, the DOJ is looking to wind down President Trump's 2 federal criminal cases ahead of his inauguration on January 20th. Long-standing policy prevents DOJ attorneys from prosecuting a sitting president. Special counsel Jack Smith could potentially write a report on his findings instead. The Wall Street Journal editorial board out with a piece writing this: voters rejected Smith's prosecutions of Trump. Meanwhile, Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Juan Merchan also reportedly considering tossing out former President Trump's felony conviction. He's expected to make the decision by next week. Trump's Georgia case still remains in limbo with no trial date set. However, Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis won re-election this week. Joining me now is George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. He is also a Fox News contributor, constitutional law expert, and the author of The Indispensable Right. Jonathan, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Maria.
Give us your take on all of this. I mean, I guess the thinking is the president, a sitting president, has to focus on the American people and not be thinking about other things personal to him. I understand the DOJ winding these things down, but what about the rest? What is your take here?
Well, these are the feelings of battle as long after the war is lost, because the lawfare campaign did not work. Even people at other networks and liberal commentators criticized some of these cases, like the one in Manhattan, that selective prosecution is unfounded and unprecedented in how it was used against the president-elect. And the question now is, what are these prosecutors going to do about it? Their cases are floating around like the Flying Dutchman without a court of call. And the answer to that we sort of know with regard to special counsel Jack Smith. He became a lame duck prosecutor at about 2:30 a.m. last Wednesday.
Have you ever considered at-home needling?
This is Cure's micro-infusion system. Now, it's gone viral several times on social media because of its impressive results and its ease of use. Cure's system takes the idea of needling and it uses sterile heads to create one of the safest alternatives to in-office procedures. The benefits encompass most of your aging concerns. It helps with the improvement of fine lines and wrinkles, it helps with the tone and texture of your skin, and it elevates all of your other ingredients. After you wash your face, needle perpendicular to your skin. You want to gently stamp the skin working from the
Wednesday. It's not just simply that the policy against prosecuting a sitting president. The new administration is not going to continue, Smith. And I said almost 2 years ago that this would be the largest jury verdict in history, and it was. And he now has nowhere to go in all practicality. So the expectation is that he will drop those cases. The question will then be Judge Merchan. He could hold another hearing next week, but he said that he was going to make a decision on immunity. If he decides that the president does not have immunity on all of these charges and continues towards sentencing, that will occur by roughly the 26th of this month. If he tries to impose a jail term or some type of limitation on the president's movements, that's not going to happen, and it's going to be appealed. Keep in mind, in my view, Merchan made an unholy mess of this entire trial. There are layers of reversible error, in my view, and that's without even considering the sentencing. Those haven't been fully reviewed yet, so that has a long way to go. I don't expect any order of incarceration. I expect something like a conditional discharge. He could even claim that being president will qualify as community service. So there's a lot of options there. With regard to Fani Willis, like Attorney General James in New York, these are two prosecutors who are the face of lawfare. They're not going to go away. Rage is addictive, and they have really fueled that. Their supporters want to continue it. And one thing, Maria, to keep in mind is that with both houses likely in Republican control and the White House, we're not going to have the same impeachment calls and investigations that hounded Trump in his first term. But that is the center of gravity is largely to shift to people like James and Willis, who are Democratic prosecutors. And they don't view this election as a rejection of what they did, and they're going to continue it. The irony is, Trump didn't have any greater friend than James and Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. Every time they held another hearing, he went up in the polls.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true. It's so true. And, Jonathan, the fact that the DOJ winds this stuff down tells me right away this was all lawfare to begin with. And, the people knew it. The people obviously voted that way in this landslide. And yet these liberal states are still digging in. I mean, they're vowing to fight against this incoming Trump administration. Look at Governor Gavin Newsom in California, calling for a special legislative session to bolster the state's ability to counter Trump policies. In New York, you've got Attorney General Letitia James warning that she's ready to fight back against Trump once again. Watch this.
We did not expect this result, but we are prepared to respond to this result. And my office has been preparing for several months because we've been here before. We faced this challenge before.
Let me get this straight, honey. The American people at the Electoral College level and at the popular level voted for Donald Trump to be the 47th president of the United States. And she wants to circumvent the will of the people because she doesn't like Orange Man. This is just, this is going to backfire. This is going to just make Trump stronger. She is an idiot, just total idiot. And she's just, it's Trump deranged, syndrome. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. We didn't expect this result because we wanted Harris to win, but we're prepared to take him down. Let's just circumvent what the will of the people want.
And we use the rule of law to fight back. And we are prepared to fight back once again.
I mean, Jonathan, this is just outrageous. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy and Illinois Governor J.D. Pritzker, same thing, vowing to fight against Trump as if anybody is planning to go after the people of New Jersey and Illinois. Your reaction?
Well, I watched the James press conference, which was insufferable, but it was also delusional. I mean, you had this attorney general acting like everything's going great when she had such a huge role in this reelection. It was because of her lawfare that repelled many of the voters. Many of these voters don't particularly like Donald Trump, but they hated what was being done through lawfare and limiting free speech and all these other measures.
The new Bearskin Hoodie 4.0 claims to be the most advanced, waterproof tactical hoodie ever made.
Speech and all these other measures. As for these governors, the man's not even in office yet. And you've got Pritzker saying they'll have to come through me. And this type of chest pounding is going to become more and more.
I want to go to Bloomberg. I want to go to Bloomberg because they're interviewing Wasserman.
And California has postmarked by Election Day. So we've got a long 3-day weekend with Veterans Day on Monday. So we have a little bit of time before we're going to know how this plays out. And we have to just make sure that ballots are cured, because people have an opportunity when there's been a mistake that's been made to fix their ballot so that their intention is clear. And so in America, we've got to make sure that we follow the law and make sure that every valid vote has an opportunity to be counted.
Well, I don't want to walk you into too much speculation here, but I do wonder if Democrats take control of the House, and that is going to be the scenario where we have a split Congress and a Donald Trump administration on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. What would be the role of what I presume would be a very thin majority, not unlike Republicans have right now? Would it be one of insurgency? Would it be the party of no? What would Democrats consider their role in government to be?
Well, we do have an opportunity to serve in the majority, as you said. It would be with a slim majority, and that's the situation that the Republicans have now. Regardless, it would be a slim majority either way. We've had a lot of success as Democrats in the minority, with the Republicans only having a 5 and then a 4-seat majority, and being able to make sure that we were the party of normalcy. I mean, they couldn't, because they haven't been able to get out of their own way and even pass legislation with a majority. They've needed Democrats to be able to not shut the government down. They've needed Democrats to be able to not crash the economy into a cliff and lift the debt ceiling. We've had so many things that have happened as a result of Democrats being team normal because Republicans were team extreme. That will particularly be important with Donald Trump in the White House. And if we have the majority, we're going to need to make sure that we are the backstop to stop mass deportations, to stop him from, bringing to a screeching halt all of the progress we've been able to make.
Well, on the subject of Donald Trump, Congresswoman, we are getting some breaking news just crossing the wire here. The U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith has officially asked the courts to pause the prosecution against Donald Trump. He will announce plans for Trump's case by December 2nd. Keeping in mind here, there were 2 federal cases against Donald Trump, 2 indictments, one in Washington, D.C., related to results of the 2020 election and the attempt to subvert them. Another in your state of Florida, the classified documents case, Congresswoman. Largely, this move from Jack Smith was expected. The DOJ has a policy that says a president of the United States shouldn't be prosecuted. But I do wonder your reaction to this news, keeping in mind already he has become a convicted felon in a state case, but federal is different.
That's right. The 34 count felonies that he's been convicted.
34 counts conviction, right? But let's remember, my understanding was that was all about paying a porn star as a legal expense. Where's the crime? And the problem is that the jury instructions were that if there was some impropriety, that he's guilty on all counts, not individual counts. The way it normally works is that if someone is charged for like five things, the jury has to look at the evidence for each one of the 5 counts. But what the judge instructed the jury to do was pick and choose and mix and match. That's going to be thrown out in an appeals court. So they don't tell you that there was some really odd jury instructions by a judge that hated Trump. So you should say he was convicted of 34 counts, comma, but the jury instructions were really odd. So there's a high probability that in the appeals court that it'll be thrown out. That's what Bloomberg should have been doing if they wanted to be fair. But no, they don't want to be fair. They just want to demonize. Demonize, demonize, demonize. Amazing.
At the state case, and there's still a sentencing that awaits him. The federal cases, let's remember, include that Donald Trump incited an insurrection on January 6th, and that he egregiously violated the federal law and took home and refused to turn over, as the law requires, vital intelligence documents that he hoarded and that he showed off. So it is essential to our national security that these cases be able to play out. But we do have Supreme Court decisions that established immunity, so those limitations exist, and it's going to have to be sorted out on the federal cases that remain. The state case is, I think, something that we're going to have to keep an eye out on. Certainly, Donald Trump had to say in court, was convicted on all 34 counts by a jury of his peers, and a sentence should hold him accountable.
Congresswoman, should President Biden pardon Donald Trump before he leaves the White House?
I'm not going to be here and tell President Biden what he should do. I personally don't think there should be pardons coming in these cases. These are very, very serious crimes that he's committed. The cases should play out under the rules that the Supreme Court has structured. And so, no, I don't think that President Biden should be pardoning him. President Biden, I know, will be focused on trying to make sure we can continue to finish our agenda strong, continue to bring down the cost of prescription drugs through the continued negotiation after the Inflation Reduction Act successfully brought down the cost of so many prescription drugs. That has to continue. We have to continue to make sure we bring the CHIPS Act implementation forward, because as Speaker Johnson clearly indicated that they were going to look at trying to repeal that. That would be outrageous. We need to make sure that we manufacture computer chips in the United States, continue to create those homegrown jobs.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to do while the lame duck session is in session.
Well, and in the remainder of Biden's presidency, Congresswoman, I don't have to tell you that there is within your party a lot of blame being cast on Biden for not stepping away from his reelection campaign sooner. You, of course, used to chair the DNC. We can, I guess, Friday morning quarterback this all we want to. I wonder, though, if you can diagnose what went wrong in this cycle and what the Democrats need to do differently in the midterms in 2026 and then looking forward to 2028.
I've been through a lot of aftermath.
First of all, it's not Friday morning. It's Monday morning quarterback.
Analyses in post-election losses, and one thing that we need to not do is finger point. The blame game is inappropriate. Look, we have to face some hard realities here. We had tremendous accomplishments under President Biden. We have the strongest economy in the globe post-COVID, but we failed to connect, obviously, with a lot of key constituencies that were previously supportive of Democrats. And we've got some work to do that I know we're going to come together as a family and focus on under Hakeem Jeffries' remarkable leadership, whether he is the minority leader or the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and I still think that's possible. We need to come together with our other Democratic leaders on the leadership team that I'm proud to be a member of and do an analysis. And we have to make sure that we focus on the priorities of the American people, that the diffuse communications system that exists today made it unable for us to penetrate. We have to make sure people know we understand the challenges that they face. When I was on the campaign trail, Kaylee, I still hear from people about the price of groceries. We cannot let grocery companies not pass on savings that they are clearly feeling in the retail at the retail level. And we have to make sure that we're listening to people and responding about the impact of the remaining dregs of inflation that still exists.
Congresswoman Kaylee recalls your time when you chaired the DNC, and we all remember shortly after 2012, the autopsy that the Republican National Committee put forth. It was a 100-page report. Remember, Reince Priebus said, we're going to put our cards face up on the table and better appeal to Latino American voters. That was part of the outcome of this election, that in some cases, Latinos broke for Trump. And I wonder your thoughts on why. We only have a couple of minutes. I don't want to set you up here for too much of a dissertation, but what would your autopsy say today?
I represent a very large Hispanic constituency in my congressional district, and that outreach is absolutely critical. I wouldn't say that the Republicans under Trump have done such a good job allowing someone to call the island of Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage right before Election Day. Probably wasn't the best way to show that they support Hispanics, but we have to recognize Hispanics are a multi-ethnic population. They can't be treated as one size fits all, and you can't only talk to them near an election. And that's something that we have to get to work on. And we have to make sure that we're talking to them about their priorities, the economy, education, healthcare. That's top of the list. And then we also obviously have to deal with immigration challenges and some of the other things that are
illegal is illegal.
And more uniquely specific to the Hispanic community as well. We're going to do that and more.
Congresswoman, great to have you back. Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida, appreciate the conversation and have a great weekend. Kaylee, with breaking news today, this is going to be one of these days with races breaking and news on the transition with more headlines crossing this terminal.
Yeah, again, the special counsel Jack Smith asking the court to pause the prosecution against Donald Trump. Jack Smith, of course, overseeing the 2 federal cases against Donald Trump. The state cases are another matter. As we discussed with the congresswoman, he's already a convicted felon based off of the state case in New York around falsifying business records. But his team is also pushing for the other state case. The racket.
He pays his lawyer to pay a porn star. His lawyer gives him a bill. He books it as a legal expense. How is that falsifying document? I'm telling you, he's going to win in the appeals court. So it's just they only tell you they don't tell you the full story, and how the jury instructions were really strange. I want Bloomberg to bring a lawyer on and explain the jury instructions of that case. And that's where the problem is, because the jury was instructed to convict.
Case in Georgia, also related, of course, to the results of the 2020 election, to be tossed as well. So we'll continue to keep track of these developments. Get reaction from our signature political panel, Rick Davis.
Yeah, we're Bloomberg and we're biased. We're Bloomberg and we're biased.
On Bloomberg TV and radio.
Times deliver news, insight, and analysis live 2 times a day every trading day. Balance of up.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my work so you can hear me critique Bloomberg on the fly. All right? Go to my store and get the vitamin D3. It's a gene expression cofactor, which is really important for cellular processes. Vitamin D3 also helps to absorb calcium and help to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. Vitamin D3 you should be taking every day. I take it in the morning and in the evening. Take vitamin D3, very, very important. And it's synergistic with many things like K2. Resveratrol, it's an antioxidant. It helps to get rid of senescent cells and helps with the health of your mitochondria. This is really important. It stacks really well with C60. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the resveratrol, get the vitamin D3.
Yeah, I guess he'll be making a filing on December 2nd. Kind of an anticlimactic finish, it appears to be, for this massive effort that Jack Smith put together in these two cases. And we're joined right now on this breaking news by Bloomberg legal reporter Eric Larson, who's been covering this since the very beginning. Eric, this is how it ends.
Yeah, I mean, we will see what the judge says, but the writing was on the wall as soon as Trump won the election. And just a few days ago, of course, we learned that the Justice Department was already looking into ways to make these two cases go away. And of course, it is a result of this Justice Department, longstanding Justice Department policy that you can't prosecute a sitting president. Of course, Trump is not president yet, but they want to get these cases, I think, out of the way before his inauguration, and this is the first step in doing it.
Well, of course, it's too late for one case against Donald Trump already, Eric. In the falsifying business records case here in New York, he already was convicted on all 34 felony counts, making him a convicted felon. He's supposed to be convicted, or rather sentenced in that case on November 26th, just a few weeks from now. Is that still going to happen?
Well, as of right now, that date is still on the books. But you can expect that Trump's lawyers are going to make a strong push to prevent this sentencing from going forward. Of course, he faces as long as 4 years behind bars for these crimes. And even though most legal experts have said that he would probably get far less than that, or even just probation, I don't think they're going to want a judge to be able to issue any kind of sentence at all before the president-elect takes office. So just the mere threat that it could be a sentence of incarceration that would hang over him as he takes office would be the argument that they would make that would interfere with a president's constitutional rights, and interfere with his ability to do the important work of office.
All right, Bloomberg's Eric Larson, thank you so much for jumping on the phone with us as we handle this breaking news. Appreciate your time. And of course, there's another case to consider here as well, Joe, another state case, the one brought against him and many other defendants in Georgia, also related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. That's the racketeering case that the DA of Fulton County, Fani Willis, has brought. It's unclear how that moves forward. The Trump team would like it not to, obviously.
That's for sure. And we have to remember that even if there was a Biden pardon, that doesn't apply to state level cases. So it's an interesting component here to this whole story.
These people are always going to go after Trump.
Days of this election turnout, we're having this conversation right now. I want to bring in our signature panel: Rick Davis, Stone Court Capital partner, Republican strategist, and Jeannie Shanzano, political science professor at Iona University and senior democracy fellow at the Center for the Study.
Let's see if they say anything about how weird the jury instructions were.
These charges, their long-standing prohibition against prosecuting a president should apply to a president-elect. It is unhealthy for the democracy, and I hope that Alvin Bragg, the DA in Manhattan, is able, or the judges in New York are able to put that to rest as well, because we do have to move forward, and this cannot continue. You cannot do democracy in the courts. It has to be decided at the ballot box. He won, and we have to get behind him and move forward.
Yeah, Rick, another way of viewing this is the Justice Department abiding by what the will of 74 million Americans is.
Yeah, well, you don't want to just trust 74 million Americans to decide what is legal and what is not legal, right? No one should be above the law, and sitting presidents don't have immunity against their personal acts, right? So just to put it in that context, but it is not healthy for democracy to be chasing after former presidents or current presidents, for things done not related to their official acts of the presidency. So I think we should have all learned our lesson on this. The indictments of Donald Trump buoyed his campaign in the primary when other people were running against him. And in assuming those things were all done for the right reason, that it was because of the normal course of the legal system, we really did bend the political dynamic here by having all this legal activity around Donald Trump during a presidential year.
I asked Debbie Wasserman Schultz the last few, should Joe Biden pardon Donald Trump?
No, I don't think so. I would hope
Would
that,
that be good for the sake of the democracy?
I don't think he needs to pardon him. I think the Justice Department does what Jack Smith is asking them to do. And on these state cases, the New York and Georgia, which are very different cases, they move forward as well and ensure that there's no issue involving prison or anything else. And let's put this behind us. I don't think we need to see Joe Biden doing a pardon. And I do think it's a reminder that what Mitch McConnell said during the impeachment and then the trial of that, this should be handled in the courts, was dead wrong. These are political decisions, and he should have stepped up if he thought Donald Trump was guilty, which he said he did, and he should have brought Republicans along to remove him from office at that point, not throw this to the judiciary.
Well, but when we consider the future of the judiciary, obviously Donald Trump, we don't know who it is yet, will be able to appoint his own attorney general. We'll have a new looking Department of Justice. And we should point out, consistently during his campaign, Rick, he talked about weaponizing that against his political opponents in the way he felt it had been weaponized against him in all of these cases, this retribution tour. Should we still expect that to happen? Or if they go away, does this all move into the quiet?
No, we'll never know, right? I mean, I don't think you can predict an outcome on anything in a prospective administration, whether it's Donald Trump's or anybody else's. That being said, I thought Mitt Romney had the right concept 8 months ago, before this campaign really heated up, and said that President Biden should have pardoned him at the time these charges were brought. In other words, why wait till all this unfolds and all this negativity takes hold in our society when it would have been appropriate for one president to pardon another? This has happened before. The last thing we should be doing is prosecuting for, if there's any shade of political motivation to it, our leaders. And so if you want a healthy democracy, you got to take a step back from this kind of lawfare.
Well, as Donald Trump watches all of this unfold, he's not waiting around to find out. He's going ahead with the transition and reaching out to world leaders. There was a phone call, as we already talked about, with President Zelensky of Ukraine. And there's reporting today, Jeannie, that Elon Musk was also on that call. And of course, the Starlink service has, I guess, something to do with the conversation here about the way forward in Ukraine. But what does that mean for what this administration is going to look like and the role that Musk will play? Because it seems like a pretty big one.
Yeah, I mean, out of Tuesday night, in addition to Donald Trump, the big winner there was Elon Musk. And that is very clear. He was at the speech at Mar-a-Lago on Wednesday morning. He is on the phone with Zelensky, and we assume other world leaders. He has said he will take some kind of role, not necessarily a cabinet position, certainly in the administration. So he has a big role to play. And I think it's going to be the job of the investigative press to be the watchdog. We hope that they are, and to follow what is happening, because this is somebody whose business and life benefits enormously from billions of taxpayer dollars.
So whether or not Elon Musk is in the cabinet remains unclear, but we are getting more reporting on what that cabinet could look like from the Financial Times this hour. Rick, you guessed this last night when we were on Balance of Power. Apparently he's looking at Linda McMahon, the former small business administrator, for Commerce Secretary. Robert O'Brien, who was NSA, or National Security Advisor during the Trump admin, will not be coming back, but coming back for a second round, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer.
Robert Lighthizer, probably the sharpest protectionist in the Republican Party. And he, as far as Donald Trump was concerned, he did exactly the right thing in his first term, organizing the tariff regime against China and others. So we can expect a lot of that to happen again. Look, I think one of the things we're going to be surprised about is that there aren't going to be that many big surprises, around Donald Trump's selection of people for his cabinet or his sub-cabinet. It's a trust relationship there, and these are all talented people. I mean, Linda McMahon, really did a fabulous job at the Small Business Administration, especially as COVID started to take a hold. So I think we can anticipate a professional cabinet, but one that is intensely loyal. And so, and look, I mean, I think the jury's out right now. We don't know what role Elon Musk is going to take, but Elon Musk has reformed the space program, satellite program, infrastructure development. I mean, we could do worse than to have someone like him sitting next to the president when he's making decisions. That being said, we'll see where he winds up if there is an official position for him. He's a former lawyer for the U.S. steel industry, which kind of gives us an interesting backdrop for the Nippon proposed acquisition of U.S. Steel, which obviously Donald Trump doesn't want to see happen. But what is this appointment? He hasn't accepted it yet. Suggest about Trump 2.0.
You know, I think Trump 2.0 in this way, I think is not going to be like, unlike Trump 1.0. He didn't have much use for the cabinet beyond some critical positions. He left a lot of that to his folks, and his number one demand was loyalty and assisting him in fulfilling his promises. So I think that's what we are seeing here, and I think what we're hearing also is that those people who cannot make it through Senate confirmation, and there are some, are going to be put into the White House as officials. So I think we're going to see a movement of officials who can get through confirmation, going that route to the cabinet. All of the other ones, and we know their names, are going to be put in the White House regardless. And I do think on Elon Musk, we have a system of checks and balances. We do not anoint somebody to fix infrastructure and everything else without those checks. So he is brilliant and he does a lot, but he also needs to be checked.
We know their names, Steve Bannon. Who are you talking about?
Oh, well, we know their names, right? Steve Bannon, you can think about, we can think of a whole host of people. We know some of those people, when you think just about Stephen Miller on the issue of, trying to, for instance, work on his number one promise, which is deportation. That is Stephen Miller's game. He will make it through a Senate confirmation, but he'll do it once again from the White House.
Well, it'll get easier with every additional senator in the Republican majority, right, Rick? There's still 2 races outstanding.
Still 2 races outstanding. I think we're at 53. I don't think additional races will matter other than, comfort going forward when you need to get a closer vote for 60. So the real question is for fiscal issues, whether or not Republican majority will hold in the House. I think we're going to be waiting around until California counts all their ballots. So that could be weeks before we actually know the content of Congress. How about Arizona? You've got people on the ground there. When are we going to get a call? For the Senate race, I think very soon. There are 45,000 votes still uncounted. Most of those are in Maricopa County. Right. And the way Maricopa County releases things,
Is California trying to swing the election for the House? Maybe. Maybe, they're doing some, how do we know that they're not fraudulently changing the votes? How do we know this?
Thank you so much. Coming up, we have much more ahead from World Headquarters in New York as the second Trump administration begins to take shape. Alongside Katie Lyons, I'm Joe Matthew on Bloomberg TV.
Let's go back to Fox News.
And it's a continuation of panic politics. The suggestion that all of them were saying, many of them expressly saying that this would be our last election, that dictatorship is here and it's going to be the end of democracy. People didn't buy that because American citizens are not chumps. They know that we've had 2 centuries of the most stable constitutional system in the history of the world, and they're not buying the chest pound.
No, they were not buying it. And you write this in your new op-ed on foxnews.com, writing Trump's victory puts an end to Democrat attacks on the Supreme Court. You also predict that Trump could have a chance to pick 2 more Supreme Court justices should Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito decide to retire. We don't know if that's the case, but there are some Democrats calling for Justice Sonia Sotomayor to step down right now. So President Biden can appoint a liberal justice before leaving office. Tell us more about that.
Well, it is really amazing to watch these same figures who blew every call before the election and giving advice saying, now Sotomayor resign. That would be a remarkably stupid decision in my view. Because first of all, Sotomayor is not going anywhere. She's in fine health. She's mentally sharp as ever. She's having a great legacy on the court from the left. It's really disgraceful to see the left turning on her as they did previously with Justice Breyer, But what happens if you miss the mark? That's what's the problem with these short sellers, is that they make these demands. What happens if you don't get it? Then you've got a vacant seat on the Supreme Court, and Trump could have 3 nominees. He's on course to having the most nominations of any president in the history of certainly the 9-member court.
Yeah.
And in my view, he has done well with his last 3 justices. They had proven to be extraordinarily good justices.
Yeah. Well, they're ready to jump ship the way they were ready to jump ship on Joe Biden, right? And he was all smiles the other day.
We're following the breaking news. President-elect Donald Trump tapping.
Amazing. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. And get the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex is great for your neurons, great for your mitochondria, and it helps with your cellular metabolism. This is really important to take, especially when you get older. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Part of the pillar of the anti-aging protocol is to bring down inflammation, right? And you can do that by taking these 2 supplements. Turmeric is an antioxidant, so it'll soak up free radicals, but it'll also bring down inflammation, bring down those pro-inflammatory cytokines. And ashwagandha root will help with your glucose levels, your cortisol levels, lower them. And so that will bring down inflammation. So these 2 work very well together. They're very synergistic. When you take these, you're going to be boosting up your immune system, and you're also improving your cardiovascular health, because it's through inflammation of the vascular system that starts the process of plaque buildup. So by bringing down inflammation, you're improving your cardiovascular system and your immune system. Please go to my store and get the turmeric and the ashwagandha root. Very important. It's the second pillar of a 3-pillared process. Neutralize pathogens with like max 35 or max 14. Bring down inflammation with turmeric and ashwagandha, and soak up free radicals by taking C60. That's the core of the anti-aging protocol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the turmeric and the ashwagandha. All right. With that said, let's take a look at what's going on in the news. All right, this is.
Welcome back. Iran reportedly back on its heels after President-elect Trump's resounding victory. Trump reportedly planning to renew his maximum pressure campaign on Tehran. The Wall Street Journal writes this: Trump's approach to Iran is likely to be colored by the knowledge that its agents tried to assassinate him. People tend to take that stuff personally. Trump planning on increasing sanctions and choking off Iran's oil income. This comes as Iran's currency tanked to an all-time low on Wednesday following Trump's election win. Meanwhile, experts say Beijing is rattled by Trump's win as well. Xi Jinping even calling to congratulate Trump yesterday, saying China will work with the United States on the basis of mutual respect as tensions loom over Trump's tariff threats. Russian President Vladimir Putin also congratulating the incoming 47th president in his first public remarks since the U.S. election, saying Trump acted like a real man following the assassination attempt on his life, and noting Russia is now open to dialogue with the United States. Interesting. And now a senior official from Hamas reportedly calling for an end to the war with Israel after the election. Everybody's getting in line. Joining me now is the Senator-elect from Montana, Tim Sheehy. Senator-elect, thanks very much for being here. Congratulations on the win.
Thanks, Maria. And what we've seen, it's been 48 hours, and guess what? The world's already getting back into work. They respect strength. People respond to strength. And by showing strength, we're going to make the world a safer place.
Well, that is exactly right. I mean, a day later, all of our adversaries are getting in line. You are a Navy SEAL. Thank you for your service to our great nation. What impact do you think the Trump administration will have on foreign policy going forward? Let's talk first 100 days.
Well, we're already seeing it right now, Maria. We're seeing that when you draw a line in the sand and you enforce that line in the sand, like President Trump did when he killed Soleimani several years ago, that was a pivotal moment for many of us who served in the Middle East, because while we were fighting in Iraq and fighting in Afghanistan and elsewhere, we were really fighting Iran's malign influence that entire time. We have to remember, Iran's been killing Americans for 43 years, nonstop all over the world, and been the largest state sponsor of terror. And yet we've seen Obama and Biden and Harris give them billions upon billions upon billions of dollars in incentives to continue to act that way. If you give people incentives, they will respond to those incentives. When you punish them, they will respond to that. So Trump's treatment of Iran and his willingness to draw the line in the sand is an example of how the rest of the world will look at his foreign policy and say, we want to be friends with this guy. We want to be friends with America. We don't want to get on their bad side. And now it's not even, he hasn't taken office yet. We're already seeing the impacts of strength and common sense in foreign policy, because it's common sense to put the interests of your own country first.
And of course, you will be helpful to President Trump in the Senate. You just won your Senate race, as I mentioned at the top of this interview, against the incumbent three-term Democrat, John Tester, officially flipped red now in what some are saying is a mandate after President-elect Trump's victory. Senator-elect, I want to get your take on what I'm reading this morning, however, on the policies and what can get done. I'm reading a Piper Sandler report, and they write this: Trump does not come out of this election with the votes or the political capital to impose his will on Congress. We remain skeptical there will be a major tax cut or an expansionary fiscal policy. A cut in the corporate tax rate is highly unlikely because even with a few votes to spare in the Senate, almost everything will require 60 votes. The big exception is a budget package that can be passed under reconciliation, but let's talk about that, because Trump has a lot of tax proposals. Are you going to be able to get them over the finish line?
Well, we'll have to see, obviously what the details of those are, but we're going to fight for it every step of the way. And I disagree with that statement in that report. There is a mandate. Coast to coast, we saw a mandate from Americans of all race, colors, creeds, classes across this nation. They repudiated the policies of the last 3.5 years. And those policies, as you know, spanned economic, cultural, foreign relations, military. The entire grab bag of ridiculous DEI America-last policies was thrown out the window on Tuesday, and America made clear that they want to get back to common sense. So I think there is a mandate. I think my win shows, a three-term incumbent by 8 points, Trump winning the popular and the electoral college. So I think there is a mandate. There's no question we're going to have a challenge, arm wrestling and knife fighting in the Senate and the House, getting some of these policies through legislation. It's going to be tough. I don't think anyone thought it was going to be easy. But we're certainly going to fight for tax cuts because, letting Americans keep the hard-earned money that they've made in their pocket is the best thing we can do for the American people. And trying to take that money and giving it to failing bureaucracies that simply ask for more when they go through the previous amount is unacceptable. We got to stop doing that. We're going to make the government accountable financially.
So where do you think the common ground is on some of Trump's policies that you think you will be able to get that 60 votes that you need?
Well, I think some of these states that now are seeing, even blue wall states are starting to see erosion of the acceptance of these far left policies. Even look at Minnesota. I mean, the popular vote in Minnesota, which is obviously the one state that didn't go for Reagan, Trump did pretty well there. So I think some of those sitting senators, like the folks who were running as Trump Republicans in the final days of the campaign, some of these blue senators that all of a sudden were running as pro-Trump Republicans, I'm going to say, it's good for my political future to be a part of policies that my people want. So I think some of those tax policies, obviously foreign policy, I think is something that most people can agree on has been a disaster in this administration. They don't want to see any more of this from Afghanistan to Iran. They're going to try to unite on that. So I think the tax fights, it's going to be tough to get to the 60-vote threshold there. There's going to be a lot that he'll be able to do with executive action, just undoing a lot of the stuff that Biden did in the first place. That's the best thing he can do on day one, and I think he will.
And in terms of nominations and Senate confirmations, what about that? Because President Trump is now putting together a team, and there are expectations that he may very well be able to nominate 2 Supreme Court justices in the next 4 years as well.
Yeah, there's certainly that possibility. With Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito being some of the most senior members, I think the most senior members on the court, it's very possible they're going to retire. So I think that's the most important set of priorities for the Senate, is making sure that we're able to shepherd through personnel appointments as quickly and swiftly as possible. We'll see if we have the vigor of the resistance movement we saw last time Trump took office in 2017. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're not going to have that because I think, as I said, the mandate has been given across the country. I think a lot of these Democrats who are in vulnerable states will realize that being part of a resistance movement against a president who just won the popular vote, electoral landslide, and the people gave us congressional mandate as well. They're going to say, instead of being resistance, maybe this time we'll try to be a little bit more productive. Time will tell on that, but we need to make sure we have senators and congressmen in place in our leadership positions that are ready to work with the Trump administration and put America first. And I think that's what we're going to see is probably the top, litmus test for leadership on both sides of Congress. There, as people say, who's going to be willing and able to work with the Trump administration.
All right, Senator-elect, good to see you this morning.
Before we go to the next video, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. And get the Goodnight Formula. This will help you get into 3 cycles of REM sleep. You'll be well rested and you're consolidating memory. That's really important. When you get 3 cycles of REM sleep and you're well rested, you're actually detoxifying your central nervous system. That's super important, all right? Chronic sleep deprivation can lead to early onset of dementia. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight Formula. I've partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've created these great deodorant bars. That are in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, and citrus. These are made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high quality ingredients, no aluminum, no baking soda in it, dual purpose product. You use it as a deodorant, but it will also help to detoxify your body slowly. So please get a couple bars for your household. It's for males and females. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorant bars. All right, I am curious to know the perspective of Al Jazeera on
how much is school broken.
If we're going to talk about little boys, then we've feminized little boys in making them sit in circle time.
All right. So
European leaders meet with the consequences of Donald Trump's.
All right. So the title of this is "What Could Donald Trump's Return to Power Mean for Europe?" So let's take this was published about 19 minutes ago.
Dominating talks. The war in Ukraine, relations with Russia, NATO, and trade and tariff fears are all under scrutiny. So what might be in store for Europe with Trump back in power? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tom McRae. European leaders gathered just as Donald Trump's election win unfolded, not to celebrate his victory, but to analyse its implications at a summit planned long before his win. And while Trump is yet to state his policies, European leaders are nervous about any big shifts from the Biden administration on the Ukraine war, relations with Russia and NATO. The war has led to militarization levels within Europe not seen since World War II, with fears of it widening into a full-blown conflict between Russia and the West. It has also damaged Europe's economy. Sanctions banning imports of Russian oil and gas have caused energy costs to fluctuate. The continent's industrial powerhouse, Germany, has been hit particularly hard, now in a second year of recession. Any new trade war with a new White House administration would be coming at a particularly bad time for Europe. So what will Trump's return mean for Europe and for NATO in the war between Russia and Ukraine? We'll be talking to our guest shortly, but first, this report from Hamza Mohammed.
European leaders meet at a summit in the Hungarian capital Budapest in the week of Donald Trump's election victory. Central to discussions is what a Trump presidency will mean for the continent and what uncertainty it might bring.
Il a été élu par le peuple américain. He was elected by the American people, and he's going to defend the interests of the Americans, and that's legitimate, and that's a good thing. The question is, are we ready to defend the interests of Europeans?
During his campaign, Trump said he could end the Ukraine war in a day, but never said how. The EU and UK have strongly backed Ukraine, sending weapons and money to bolster its defense against Russia. But there are divisions in Europe too. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban an ally of Trump, has called for a ceasefire.
Where we are at this moment is that there is no communication. And the first precondition of every peace is communication. And the precondition of communication is the ceasefire.
Ukraine fears that Trump might cut its military support and strike a deal with Russia. Opinion polls suggest more Ukrainians do support talks to end the war. But Ukraine's leader is critical of Orban's ceasefire calls.
I think it's very dangerous rhetoric. We understand which leaders implement and raise this rhetoric concerning the ceasefire. It's a very scary challenge for all our citizens.
US and Russia relations have effectively collapsed since the war, but Putin says he's open to talks with Trump.
The desire to restore relations with Russia to help bring the Ukrainian crisis to an end, I think that deserves attention at the very least. And I take this opportunity to congratulate Trump on his election as President of the United States of America.
In the past, Trump accused NATO members of not spending enough on their own defense and relying too much on the US. He even threatened to pull out of the alliance. In one campaign speech, he said he would encourage Russia to attack countries that don't pay their way into NATO. Reducing military reliance on the US is now high on the European agenda.
We must do what is necessary for our security together as the European Union, as Europeans. This will be particularly successful if everyone makes their contribution.
The US and Europe are military allies, but there are fears of a war on a different front, trade. His American First platform and protectionist policies mean he could impose tariffs on European imports as he did last time. European leaders say they are ready to respond if so, but with Germany and other countries weakened economically by the Ukraine war, none will be relishing the prospect of a trade battle with the US. Hamza Mohammed, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Okay, let's bring in our guest now. And this is Philip Short, a biographer of Vladimir Putin and a former foreign correspondent with the BBC.
Before we go with the panel, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the supplements and boost up your immune system and slow down the aging process and have more energy, detoxify your body, just have more longevity, all right? It's something that I do every day. Some of the products that I take are omega-3. This helps with your lipid profile. This lowers LDL and increases your HDL levels. That's really important, all right? In addition, omega-3 helps to prevent the red blood cells from sticking too much. So it's slowing down overclotting, all right? Omega-3 taking every day will improve your cardiovascular health. Why? Because you're preventing the clotting, overclotting, the oversticking of the red blood cells, and you're bringing down your LDL levels. And when you bring down your LDL levels, you have less LDL that's going to be oxidized that builds up plaque. Take this every day to improve your cardiovascular health. Really important. Digestive enzyme complex. When we get older, we need a little bit of help for our pancreas. This is a great way to help your pancreas. Why? Because the pancreas secretes enzymes to break up carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, all right? The digestive enzyme complex here will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. So you can absorb those nutrients and lower the stress on your pancreas. That's really important when you get older. If you're an athlete, if you want to recover quicker, take the digestive enzyme complex so you can extract those nutrients in and recover, do your post-recovery. All right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. In addition, there are enzymes in here that will break up glycoproteins. That was really important. Remember in 2020, there's something called the spike, right? All right. So you need proteins that you need proteolytic enzymes that'll break up glycoproteins. There are enzymes in here that'll break up glycoproteins. In addition, this has bromelain in it. And that's fibrinolytic. That means that it'll help to break up clots. And this is synergistic with omega-3. Why? You can break up clots with bromelain, which is an enzyme that's in here. And you're having the red blood cells not sticking as much because you're taking omega-3. Now, do you understand why I kept on saying it's really important to take omega-3 and digestive enzyme complex during the crisis? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. And lastly, it's really important to take a multivitamin every day. Why? Because it's a cofactor for enzymatic activity. And with these cofactors, you're going to have the proper enzymatic activity and the proper processing of the cells, the proper metabolism, the proper execution of what that cell's supposed to do, because you gave it the nutrients it needs. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This is an easy to digest multivitamin. You should be taking a multivitamin every day, no matter what age you are. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Cottrell, Professor of Politics at the School of Law and Government at Dublin City University. And in London is Chris Weaver, the CEO of Macro Advisory, a strategic consultancy focused on Russia and Eurasia. Thank you very much for being with us here on Inside Story today. A lot to get through, obviously, with Trump being elected and due to take office on January the 20th. Philip, if I can begin with you, I mean, given the unpredictability of Trump and what we saw in his first term, as well as the threats he has made during his campaign, how nervous should European leaders be right now with looking ahead to the next 4 years?
I think there are two factors that they need to take into account. One is that Europe is politically not very strong at the moment. If you look at the two main countries, France and Germany, France, President Macron does not have a majority in parliament, which means he can't pass legislation, and the German government has just collapsed. This is not the greatest situation to meet the return of a very disruptive and radical president in the United States. So that's a problem. The other thing, you mentioned unpredictability. If anybody tells you at the moment that they know what Trump is going to do, they're making it up. Trump himself probably has not yet decided exactly what he's going to do towards Europe or even towards Ukraine and Russia. Certainly he will try to do something to fulfill his campaign pledges of ending the war with Ukraine. But how he's going to do it, again, it's very much up in the air. So for the next few months, I think we're great uncertainty.
Yeah, I guess from what we know from what he has said and how he's acted in the past, that it will no doubt be America first and foremost, and that will form the basis of most of the decisions that he makes. Donka, given the political and economic fragility that Philip was talking about there, that seems to be spreading across Europe, especially in Germany and as well as France, I mean, is Trump's win basically coming at the worst possible time for Europe?
Yes, it is. Not least because Europe is at war because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Europe is not united. We have a European Union, but despite the name, it's not a unitary state and certainly doesn't act as a major geopolitical actor. And it's not secure, simply because for many years the member states haven't really invested in defense. That's why we have that dependence on the US security umbrella, which is, of course, institutionalized in NATO. And for some time in European elections, there's been a battle for the soul of Europe, if I can call it that, between two very different visions. You could say that either Europe integrates and becomes stronger and becomes an actor in its own right, or it fragments. And we've already seen what that can lead to in the case of Brexit. But we have other players within the European Union, spoilers with an illiberal nationalist vision, who are mini Trumps, you might say, in Europe. So they're going to be very emboldened. Viktor Orban yesterday in Budapest was like a cat who's just had his cream. I mean, he was more or less able to say, look, I told you so. My vision is ascendant. Your vision of a European Union based on liberal values is in decline.
Yeah, he certainly made that point very strongly yesterday. It looked like his gamble over the last few years has paid off with Trump winning the White House. Chris, is Europe prepared for the potential economic storm when it comes to trade and tariffs that Trump could bring over the next 4 years? And if not, why not? And what does it need to do to prepare itself?
Well, I think as the previous two speakers have said, I've noticed the Europe is not in a good position economically or in terms of political unity. So if it is challenged.
You know what's amazing is you had an international community that was demonizing Trump in his first administration, and he's coming in his second administration, and everything is just falling apart. You know, the whole international community is falling apart. It's almost as if they're being cursed because of what was going on post October 7th. All right. But the thing here is that there's some big things are going to happen positively for the United States. We just got to stay the course, be humble, and focus on those pillars: God, country, and family, and things will turn out. There's disunity in Europe, and they're going to have to start preparing. They need to pay their way in NATO. They need to stop, thinking that there are going to be people in our government, in the United States government, that is going to allow the European Union to walk all over the American worker. No, that's over. That's over. It's time for America first. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with America first. And oh, by the way, what other nation in the world is going to do the big things? The next big leap for mankind. So just get out of our way, Euro lovers, and just let Americans do what they need to do. Get the job done.
By a more assertive US and a more aggressive US presidential policy, then it's not in a good, a position to defend itself or to come up with, responses. So, it is certainly expected that Donald Trump will focus a great deal on trade and the economy. We have to remember that, he won the election on domestic issues, not on foreign policy, but on domestic issues. He has promised people that he will improve the economy. He's promised people better jobs. He has promised people that he will, stop the import of cheap goods that are taking away American jobs. So a trade battle, trade war might be a bit too much. We could certainly say to be a lot more aggressive with China. We had that before. And of course, it is something that the Biden administration is beginning with as well. So Trump will, first of all, go after China in terms of tariffs and to try to rebalance trade with China. But there will be implications for Europe as well. And I think it certainly will be up to the European leadership how that proceeds, how they engage initially with Trump. If they put the barriers up themselves and want to defend Europe and not to engage, then I think it'll be tough. But if there's more engagement, then perhaps we might see it easier in terms of negotiating with the US relative to US and China, which we expect to be very tough.
Obviously, a lot of it will depend on how united Europe can remain. Philip, we heard Emmanuel Macron, the French president, say Trump is going to defend the interests of Americans. The question is, are we ready to defend the interests of Europeans? I mean, are Europeans leaders, are they ready to do this? And how do they actually go about trying to do that and stay united when, as we've seen, it is particularly fractured at this point in time?
The European Union experiment failed. It will never be unified. Why? Too much history, too many languages. It'll never work. They're trying to be America. It'll never be America. They're always going to be secondhand.
It's a wonderful question, and I wish I had an answer. I wish any of the European leaders have an answer, because I don't think they really do. I can see them doing two things. You're beginning to see this already. There was, when Trump was elected and he announced that his victory, there was a kind of unseemly race among European leaders. Who could be the first to congratulate him? I think Macron got in a few minutes before Keir Starmer in Britain. But that, I think, is symptomatic of the way they are going to try to establish personal relations with Trump. Giorgia Meloni in Italy already has quite a good relationship with him. That is a way that individual European leaders may see of trying to kind of smooth things over and make it a less contentious relationship. It may be a wish and a prayer because Trump is pretty practical about these things and personal relationships don't matter that much to him. The other thing I think you were talking just now, we were talking about tariffs and trade war, is Trump hates trade surpluses, trade deficits for America, surpluses for other countries. And of course, China is the big target for that, but Europe also. So I think we may.
BBC is announcing in my notification here, U.S. Justice Department charges Iranian man in connection with alleged plot to kill Donald Trump during election campaign. Scary.
Chelsea moves to try to offer Trump sweeteners on the trade front to stop that relationship, the trade relationship, getting completely out of order.
Just staying on the trade issue and tariffs. I mean, Trump put tariffs on 25% on steel, 10% on aluminium in 2018 when he was last president. So this is a real possibility that he could do something like this to Europeans. Probably not as bad as what he's threatening against China, as we know. Donica, where do you see this falling? And do you think it's a real threat, or is he just going to use that as a threat to try and get what he wants?
I think he'll try and use it as leverage to get what, from his perspective, is a better deal from America, because, as you said, he feels that the current situation is to America's disadvantage. But you have to remember that Donald Trump, if we look at his first presidency, he did promise a lot of things that he didn't deliver. I mean, where's that wall that was going to be built between the United States and Mexico, and that Mexico was going to pay for? So tariffs might be in that category. It's kind of one of those headline policies that sounds revolutionary and big and confrontational, but may not actually transpire, for the simple reason that it's a bit like nuclear deterrence. I mean, there's a lot of countries with nuclear weapons. Why don't they actually press the button? Because they know if they press the button, they don't have first strike capability. They're not going to knock out their opponents. Their opponents are going to come back and knock them as well. It's the same with tariffs. You can impose tariffs on other regimes, other countries, but they also have the ability to hit you with tariffs as well. And that leads to a race to the bottom, which is really in nobody's interest. So I wouldn't be overly worried right now. And as has been said already, he may not have decided himself on the exact approach that he's going to take.
Yeah, Chris, we've heard some economists warning of profound economic losses for Europe. I mean, that potentially the EU GDP could fall by 0.5 percentage point and cost Germany alone $190 billion over the 4 years of the Trump presidency. I mean, is that being overly dramatic at this point in time?
Absolutely overly dramatic, I think, is a good way to describe it. Clearly, there will be tough talking, which we all agreed on. But also remember, Donald Trump is going to be very preoccupied at home. He has, of course, a whole legacy of legal cases to deal with. He has made some very aggressive and very strong commitments and promises to the American electorate to deal with immigration, to get rid of illegal immigrants, and of course to deal with the economy. So, he's only got 4 years, and in reality, he probably only has 3. To deal with all of that, and therefore, his ability to do everything that he has said, of course, is just simply not. It's not there. It's not going to happen. I think he will look for a couple of strong victories on the international stage, and here, of course, we're talking primarily, I guess, about Ukraine, Russia, and Israel, Gaza. But really, his ability and the time to deal with other issues when he really has to focus on his domestic agenda, then I really do think that any extrapolation of what he said into really damaging economics or trade is overly dramatic. So no, I don't expect that to happen in that way at all.
Yes, and what he says doesn't necessarily mean what he will actually do or what he'll be able to do, as we saw in his first 4 years. Yes. Philip, if we can move on to the war in Ukraine, because obviously that is one of the major issues that has been dominating over the last few years when it comes to Europe and the Russia-US relationship. I mean, Trump said he could end the
I think Trump is going to be a wrecking ball for the EU.
The war in a day without giving any detail as to how he would actually go about doing that. I mean, obviously it's going to take longer than that, but it still stands that he wants to see an end to it in some way, shape or form. How do you see this playing out with Trump as president?
I think that's one of the few certainties that, to me, there are two certainties about the Trump coming back to power. One is he will try to do something about Ukraine. The other is that the Europeans are almost certainly going to have to try and raise their defense spending because the American defense umbrella is going to look more and more kind of fragile and tattered. I think those two things we can reckon on. But on Ukraine, yes, he'll try. But the problem is, will Zelensky agree? And even more so, will Putin agree to start some kind of negotiation? Because in Putin's mind, the Russians are doing rather well. You know, there is Ukraine fatigue setting in Europe, certainly among public opinion, to a greater extent perhaps than among some of the governments. But indefinite support of Ukraine, I think, is becoming more and more of a mirage. And in those circumstances, if you were Putin, would you say, well, okay, I'll settle for less than I really want? That's going to be a difficulty. Trump and Putin will certainly talk, but whether Putin will give in easily and agree to negotiations is another issue. The second thing about Ukraine is, what will Trump try to do? Will he withdraw support from Ukraine? Or, as Mike Pompeo, who's probably going to be his defense secretary, has suggested, put more pressure on the Russians, threaten to increase support in order to bring Putin to the negotiating table? I mean, these are very uncertain, and all one can be sure of is that there will be an attempt of some kind to bring about a peace, a negotiated settlement.
Well, one thing we do know, though, is within the United States, more and more politicians, especially Republicans, are growing disinterested in giving billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine. Donica, I mean, is this Zelensky's worst case scenario now, that with Trump back in power and a Republican Senate and potentially Republicans taking control of the House, that they'll just cut off all financial and military aid to Ukraine?
It's certainly the outcome that Volodymyr Zelensky didn't want, despite his very kind of cooperative tweets yesterday saying that he had an excellent conversation with Donald Trump. It was very difficult to get the last package of $60 billion plus over the congressional line. It's going to be, I think, nigh impossible now, because Trump has made it clear, I think, if you can detect a plan, that he'd like to freeze the conflict more or less where it is. And I think when he says he'll have a phone call with Zelensky and Putin, he'll be more or less communicating to Zelensky that they will receive no aid. Now, that, of course, assumes that Zelensky will then recommend to these people to stop fighting. There's no guarantee there. And, of course, Putin doesn't seem to, in that sense, Trump is on the same page as Putin, that he doesn't give a lot of agency to Ukraine. He sees it as a pawn in a much bigger geopolitical chess game. And you must remember that the first conversation that Donald Trump had with Zelensky back in 2019, when Zelensky became president, was essentially to shake him down, where he more or less dangled $400 million of congressional aid, which had been approved, over Zelensky's head and said, I won't give it to you unless you dig up some dirt on the Biden family. So that was a very inauspicious start. As has been noted elsewhere, I mean, he has a very transactional view of relationships. So there's no emotion there. His view is that this is very much a European conflict. It shouldn't be America's responsibility to fund it or get involved. So he's going to try and, from his perspective, disengage. And that means, I think, a very disadvantageous situation for Ukraine.
Yeah. Chris, obviously we know that Trump wants European nations to up their defence spending for NATO. Can they find the money, especially in the economic times that many of these countries find themselves in?
Well, with great difficulty, is absolutely right, because, as you say, across the board in most European countries, there are, severe social issues, housing issues, funding of social services, healthcare, education, etc. And then pretty much all countries in Europe are dealing with that or some variation on it. So it would be extremely difficult for a government to say, well, we're going to, effectively take money away from other other areas of spending, kind of more domestic areas, in order to build up the military and sustain the war. So with great difficulty, I think, is the answer to that.
Maybe the whole problem is that these social programs, these ultra socialists, it's just a failure. It's not productive. This is the point that Trump is making. You know, it's not fair for the American taxpayer to have to fund other countries' military defense. Well, they're doing domestic spending and bolstering up their, the European citizens. No, because it's on a false pretense, the stability of their economy, because it's based on the backs of hardworking American taxpayers. No, pull that out. The Europeans need to be paying for their own way.
Had to, because I think, as a condition for NATO staying intact, and I think governments will, and they will have to do it, because NATO is important for Europe. The self kind of defense element of it, the Article 5, the involvement in the US, that is very, very important, and I think that would override perhaps other considerations. But it certainly would be very difficult in all European countries, as we can see.
You know what? Europeans should have been paying for their defense, and the United States should stop paying the European way. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin K2. This is the MK7 molecule. This helps with for cardiovascular fitness, but also it's also for your bone structure and your joint structure, right? So K2 is a very important vitamin, right? It's synergistic with D3. And by taking it with D3, what will happen is you're going to be able to absorb calcium, all right? And you're going to help with the remodeling of your bones, especially when you do some light resistance training, all right? So you want to maintain your bone structure. You want to maintain, the bone density, right? And improve on the joint health. But also by taking vitamin D3 and K2 and some other vitamins, you're also improving cardiovascular health, all right? How that works is that K2 and D3 help to absorb calcium into the serum, into your bloodstream. And it's trying to soak out and prevent new deposits into plaque. So plaque buildup is oxidized LDL eaten up by macrophages turning into foam cells. But what happens is there's also calcium buildup within that plaque. By taking K2, MK7 with the D3, you're getting that calcium out. By taking C60, which is a strong antioxidant, you're reducing the free radicals that will oxidize the LDL. When you take omega-3 and nattokinase, you're lowering your LDL levels. So you're reducing the chances of LDL being oxidized, plus you're soaking up those free radicals to prevent the oxidation. So you're preventing new plaque from forming. And what happens is that it's slowly, that plaque buildup slowly decreases, all right? In addition, you need to take turmeric and ashwagandha. And what will happen is you're reducing that inflammatory response in the vascular system. And turmeric is also an antioxidant, so it helps with the free radical buildup, prevents the free radicals from building up, and synergistic with C60. So by taking the turmeric, the ashwagandha, the omega-3, the nattokinase, the K2, and the vitamin D3, right there is a stack for you to control your blood glucose levels, bring down inflammation, soak up those free radicals, reduce the LDL, reduce calcium depositing, and you're slowly healing your vascular system and preventing new deposits of plaque. So please go to my store, follow my protocols. This is stuff that I do every day, all right? Vitamin K2, MK7 is a dual purpose product. It will help with bones in your joints, but it will also help with your cardiovascular system. So please go to my store, get the K2, MK7, stack it with D3 and those other supplements that I mentioned if you want to help with your vascular system and prevent and reduce plaque buildup. And since we were talking about vitamin K2, like I said, it's synergistic with nattokinase. Nattokinase and omega-3 help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. Plus, nattokinase helps to break up clots, right? Because it's fibrinolytic. So it's a dual purpose. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take nattokinase, improve your lipid profile, lower your LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, improve your cholesterol count, and break up clots. It's a great product, and it's synergistic to this protocol that I just mentioned with the K2. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Or don't pay attention to me and, have a heart attack. It's up to you. It's up to you. I told you what you need to do to improve your health. It's very simple. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and follow what I do.
Make one point. Yes, we talk about what Trump may do. One of his statements, and I know he's made, of course, lots and lots of statements, sometimes contradictory, but one of his statements does very regularly get repeated in Moscow by officials, which is the statement he said about how he would start to process a peace, which is effectively carrot and stick. He said that he would say to President Zelensky, you have to start talking or we will withdraw support. But if you do start talking, then we'll help you rebuild. But he also said he would say at the same time to President Putin, you have to start talking or we will allow Ukraine have better missiles and longer range missiles. And if you do start talking, then we start to ease sanctions. So again, as Donica say, it's this kind of deal-making aspect of Trump that we've become used to. But that's what Moscow expects. Clearly, it's something that they would not be opposed to, which is freezing the lines where they are right now. That would allow President Putin essentially to say that Russia has extended its area of defense, worth it. But they are expecting this kind of carrot and stick, forced deal-making approach to emerge from Trump. That would be the angle they're certainly expecting.
Okay, Philip, you've written a very well regarded biography of Vladimir Putin, so you probably know him best out of all of us and how he would react to both the carrot and the stick. How do you think that would play out? And can you just give us a bit of an insight into his relationship with Donald Trump and how he will deal with him when it comes to the next 4 years?
I think Chris is absolutely right. It is carrot and stick. The question is whether Trump will be able to convince Putin that it is in Russia's interest to negotiate and agree some kind of, not a peace settlement, but at least a ceasefire, a freezing of the conflict. And my understanding, my view of the relationship between Trump and Putin is that Putin does not have very much respect for Trump. He will try to flatter Trump, he will try to bring him out, but above all, he will try and get more and more from him. He'll try and play him like a fiddle. And he's quite good at that kind of thing. Putin, very early on when he was in the KGB, described himself as a specialist in human relations. And I think that is, to some extent, one of the things that he's shown during his presidency. He is quite good at manipulating those who he deals with. And Trump in particular, I think there's a real risk he will pull the threads, try and get more and more advantages, try and get Trump to put more and more pressure on Zelensky.
I don't think that's really the case. I don't think it's that. See, this guy is coming from that whole, Russian interference and that you know, they can hypnotize Trump to do whatever they want. I think Trump is a little bit more chaotic and self-determined, and not be hypnotized by Putin. I mean, come on, this is like a old Cold War BS.
So that he gets a much better deal than Trump initially would have had in mind.
And that has been one of the major criticisms of Donald Trump, especially by Democrats, that he is basically in the pocket of Putin when it comes to Europe. Donica, if we can just finish up, we've talked about all the problems that are facing Europe and what the next 4 years could look like with a Trump presidency. I mean, are there any silver linings, though, for Europeans?
There is one potential silver lining, and I think Macron captured it yesterday when he said that, look, in terms of geopolitics, the world is divided into herbivores and carnivores, those who are eating the vegetables and those who are eating the meat. Europe is a herbivore, and it risks being devoured by carnivores unless it ups its game. Because of the ambiguity of Trump's position, the fact that he lets nobody take anything for granted, including the security guarantee to Europe, there is a challenge now to Europe to come together and become a player in their own right and to unite, as Macron said, in their own interest. The problem is that, of course, and this is Europe's problem for ages, is that Europe is not united internally. The French government, of course, is very weak. The German government has just collapsed. You have the far right and the populists nipping at the heels at election time. So Europe has yet to unite. It has great potential, but despite the name European Union, we're not quite there yet. But who knows? I mean, this uncertainty in the world may be the moment that Europe actually does come together, because it's the only way it can survive, I think, in the world that we live in today.
Yeah, that's. I know the Polish Prime Minister said that they need to finally grow up and believe in its own strength. And would hopefully help jolt Europeans into doing more collectively for their defence and building a stronger European pillar, especially when it comes to NATO. Chris, finally, I mean, can Europe transform itself into a carnivore so it's not devoured?
I hope so. As a European, I absolutely hope that all of these kind of global events in the US and elsewhere will force Europe to get its act together, to become more coordinated, to one day wake up and realize that the European continent is as powerful, or can be as powerful as the US or China, and act accordingly. The last couple of years, European leaders have spent every day looking over the Atlantic at what's happening in the US and who's going to be next president, what it means for them. For goodness sake, they should be, much more self-confident about, we will deal with whatever happens, and we need to focus on ourselves and be more coordinated and make Europe a lot more united. And I really hope that events like the return of Donald Trump puts pressure for that to happen, for it finally to start moving forward, and to have Europe stop always looking over the Atlantic at what it should be saying and doing.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see if it can indeed do that. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us here on Inside Story. We really appreciate your time and your insight. Okay.
Europe is a basket case. They'll never be unified. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+. This helps to boost up your energy levels. It also helps to improve on the repair of your DNA damage. So that's really important when you get older. We have a buildup of DNA damage. We have mechanisms in our cells to help repair that. NAD+ helps with that repair mechanism. In addition, NAD+ helps with neural health. Very important as you get older. So please go to my store and get the NAD+. It's something that I've added to my protocol stack. Ubiquinol, something I've been taking for years. And this is a very high bioavailable CoQ10, all right? So ubiquinol is the active form for CoQ10, and you need that as an antioxidant, so it's synergistic with C60. So ubiquinol is an antioxidant. It'll help with improving your energy levels, and it help improve your neural health. Very important to take as you get older. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, Reykjavik.com and get ubiquinol. Ubiquinol, again, is the active form for CoQ10. It is the high bioavailable CoQ10, all right? This is the best that you can get. Go to my store and get the ubiquinol. All right, what's going on with Bloomberg here? Are they going to commercial break or not?
5%. The Russell 2000, incredible, up 7%, the best week going all the way back to 2021, the highest level since that. But we also have that Dow higher and the NASDAQ higher. In fact, right now, as I speak, so if you look at this board, the Russell 2000 up at more than 8%. So these big gains in the Trump trade, the certainty around who the next president of the United States is, Donald Trump, investors really liking that. His economic policy that they are assuming will be put in place, tax cuts, protectionism. It's interesting, though, there are some parts that have fallen away. But one way of looking at the Trump trade and one way to say that this week is not new is DJT, Trump Media and Entertainment. It is up more than 140% from the September lows. At that point, VP Harris led him in the predicted odds pretty significantly. But from that low, the stock higher, that was and is really still the market's way of voting for Donald Trump back then and saying that they thought he would be the next president of the United States. And it was a correct vote.
Trump trade still turning away from emerging markets, China stocks. Abigail, this continues.
It does continue. It's really interesting because the NASDAQ Golden Dragon Index, that HXC, it's down nearly 5% today. So really bucking the trend of the gains that we're seeing. Now, this is interesting because I read one headline saying that the reason that China stocks were down in the Asian session and also this index is lower has to do with the idea that the stimulus folks wanted out of China is not going to happen now, that President Xi of China is going to hold off for when President-elect Trump is in office to offset the possibility of the 60% tariffs. Do we know that there's 60% tariffs? No, that's the beginning of the negotiation, but it is certainly a strong stance. And it's interesting to see that maybe it's already shaping what's happening over in China.
Abigail, thank you so much. Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg Markets correspondent, with us on Balance of Power as we connect the dots between this campaign and the markets. Fascinating headline, Kaylee, coming from Punchbowl here as we talk about the prospect for our relationship with China, the downturn in China stocks. This won't help. Jake Sherman at Punchbowl tweeting, top House Republicans are looking to strip China of its normal trade status with the U.S. That would be a massive development.
Yeah, it certainly would. According to Punchbowl's reporting, they would do this through legislation in the next term. And frankly, this is something we need to consider as to whether or not it could get through on a bipartisan basis, even if Republicans can't keep control of the House, knowing that being hawkish on China has bipartisan popularity in Washington. The China Select Committee, the ranking member of which is frequently on this program, is very much advocating for restraint in what they call, of course, a strategic competition. And this would be interesting to consider how tariff policy specifically would play into that. So if you revoke the normal trade status, how does that counterplay with potentially 60% blanket tariffs on everything coming out of this?
It aligns with reporting from the Financial Times, Robert Lighthizer. USTR in the first term in the trade war with China is coming back, assuming he takes that role in a Trump 2.0. We'll have a lot more ahead on Balance of Power. Live from New York, this is Bloomberg.
All right, so the S&P 500, it has broken the 6,000 mark. Now, I still have a target of year end anywhere from 5,800 to 6,000. It's moving a little bit closer to the 6,100 mark. All right, but you know, will it end the day over 6,000 for the S&P 500? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. But it is trading intraday just above the 6,000 mark. That's bullish, but I feel the market feels a little hot right now, and it needs to cool down a little bit. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. This is a dual purpose product. It will help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. How does it work? It brings down inflammation, and it also brings down your LDL levels and increases your HDL levels, so it improves your lipid profile and your total cholesterol. All right, very important. So please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. This is a great product. If you don't want to take all these supplements and you just want to get some boost for your immune system and your cardiovascular system, this is great to do to start your journey to get healthier. Now, of course, if you stack this with C60 and the K2 and the D3 and the, the omega-3 and all these other supplements that I'm talking about, you're going to really supercharge and improve your immune system and your cardiovascular system. So please go to my store, start the journey. All right. Get healthier. You can do it. All right. Do you want to be on statins all your life? Or do you really, want to be truly healthy? All right. Go to my store, get the olive leaf extract, take it, boost up your immune system, and improve your cardiovascular health. And filter your water, eat better, and you're going to notice that your body is improving. And you follow this protocol that I've developed and that I take myself, you're really going to supercharge your body. You pay now or pay a whole lot later. It's up to you, but it's going to happen. If you don't take care of your body, it will fall apart when you get older. That's 100%. 100%. You're going to have problems when you get older. All right. So please go to my store, follow the protocol, start the journey if you haven't already. And the ones that have started the journey, keep on going. Don't stop. There's going to be added benefits as the years go on. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. It's important to detoxify your body. A great way to detoxify your body is to take my zeolite. It soaks up those heavy metals, those toxins, those chemicals, like the forever chemicals. You can take this year round. You just take a couple drops underneath your tongue, just small drops, just 2 drops underneath your tongue, and drink water, and do that every day. Or you can just detoxify your body once or twice a year. It's up to you. Obviously, if you do it every day, it's going to be more effective. And, for the ones that are doing it once or twice a year, take a few drops underneath your tongue and drink the filtered water and use up the bottle. Do that each day and use up the bottle. So you take just a few drops underneath your tongue, drink the water, do it every day until you're done with the bottle, and do that once or twice a year. But it is more effective if you maintain it year round by just taking a couple drops underneath your tongue and then soaking up those toxins, chemicals, and heavy metals. How it works is that it's a negatively charged molecule. Zeolite is a negatively charged molecule that will attach to positively charged molecules, heavy metals, chemicals, toxins, and bind and allow you to urinate that out in 6 to 8 hours. All right, so it's a great way to detoxify your body, but you also need to filter your water, make sure that you're not ingesting chemicals, and make sure that you eat better foods, higher quality foods. So you're stopping it at the input point, and you're soaking up what is in your body. And over time, you're going to improve your health. So please go to my store and get the zeolite and detoxify your body. It's important to detoxify your body. And lastly, C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant. I take it every day, take a teaspoon of it every day. Soak up those free radicals and improve your mitochondrial health and boost up your ATP. You need ATP for proper cellular processes, so your tissues are performing properly. You slow down the aging process, you'll have energy, and you need that for your neurons, you need that for your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. I have it in an extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. All right. Take a teaspoon of it a day, every day. It's very potent. It's very important. And it's part of the 3rd pillar of my protocol. Remember the 3 pillars: neutralize pathogens, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. That's the end of my broadcast. Again, go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and improve your health. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.